I'm getting married in 2 weeks and I'm totally screwed. I literally need to get this off my chest. I feel like I'm going insane. My fiancée Sarah, 28F, and me, 34 meters, have known each other for about 6 years, engaged for 1. Our wedding is scheduled to take place in just 2 weeks and I just witnessed something that is making me feel like I'm making the biggest mistake in my life. Tonight Sarah and I were taking a rare opportunity to relax at home. Sarah was in the kitchen making dinner while I was out back working on one of my projects. We live on acreage and I am building a pagoda/fire pit in the backyard that we were planning on using this fall. Anyway, as you do when you're doing heavy labor, I get thirsty and come back to the house to get a drink where I see Sarah at the counter preparing dinner and talking on speakerphone. I recognize the voice instantly as my brother-in-law Marty. Now, this is where my brain gets totally twisted. Marty asks Sarah where her sister Evelyn is as he's been trying to get in contact with her and she's not answering texts, and I hear Sarah say to him, "She just left here. She should be home in a half hour or so." It should be noted that Evelyn is Marty's wife of 5 years. I have to admit that I didn't immediately register what she had just said, because I went into the kitchen and grabbed a glass and asked Sarah what was that all about? And she responds with Marty was looking for Evie. I see her texting and I ask her what are you doing? And she says I'm texting Evie that Marty was looking for her. Anyway, I pour myself a drink, sit down, have a sip, and then finally my brain starts to work. First off, I heard Sarah tell Marty that Evelyn was here. Evelyn was not here and the last time we saw her was yesterday when she came over to work on some last-minute wedding decoration stuff with Sarah. Secondly, why is she texting Evelyn and expecting a response when I distinctly heard Marty that Evelyn wasn't answering her texts? Lastly, why the hell would she tell Marty that Evelyn should be back in 30 minutes unless she either knows where she is, then why did she lie? Or she is, right now in front of me, texting her to tell her to get her butt home quickly. The only conclusion that I came up with is that Sarah is lying to Marty about the whereabouts of her sister, Marty's wife, and is probably warning Evie that Marty will expect her home in half an hour. I then spent probably the next 5 hours concocting various explanations for this behavior, some decent, some downright horrible, and playing them back in my head. I wanted, really badly, to ask Sarah about this, but at the same time if what I think is going on, then I doubted I'd get a straight answer. Which brings me to about an hour ago. I woke up around 1 a.m. to use the toilet and I couldn't resist the urge to check Sarah's phone. We both know each other's pins, so this wasn't a difficult thing to do. Anyway, I grabbed the phone, retreated to the bathroom and unlocked it, and yup, it was exactly what I was afraid of and probably what most of you were expecting. Sarah's sister Evelyn has been having an affair for about 6 months with a coworker, and Sarah has been helping Evelyn cover it up for almost that entire time. There are literally hundreds of texts between them discussing it, discussing the coworker, discussing sex stuff, really embarrassing things about my brother-in-law, and probably uncharitable, just stuff that makes my stomach churn, and here is my soon-to-be wife going along with all of it without batting an eye. I took some screenshots of the entire thread, put the phone back where I found it, and then retreated to my home office to find myself here typing it all out on Reddit simply so I can avoid the primal scream that wants to come out of my mouth right now. I am totally 100% screwed. Reddit, I cannot marry Sarah. I just cannot do it. I can't think of any reasonable excuse she could offer me about assisting her sister in this affair and victimizing not only Marty, but their 2-year-old daughter as well. On the other hand, myself, my family, Sarah and her family, have all sunk an enormous amount of money into a wedding that is supposed to happen in around 2 weeks. There is no way we are getting any of that money back. On top of that, I feel like an absolute fool. Like, how did I not know this woman was like this? And what the hell am I going to do? I can't marry her. I absolutely cannot. However, I still want to. She's beautiful and fun and kind, and I thought we had a bright future ahead of us. She's never done anything wrong to me, but I just can't see her the same now. It's like a big black stain on an otherwise beautiful picture. I just don't know how the fuck I got this so wrong, and I'm absolutely dreading doing what I know I need to do. I feel like I want to vomit or break something. Edit, guys, you don't need to convince me to not marry Sarah. That's obvious, the wedding is off. I'm just trying to figure out my next steps and work up the nerve to do it. There's an incredible amount of pressure on me from the expectations of everyone, but I'm not going to buckle under it. I just am not relishing having to deal with the fallout, and I'm more than a little angry that I'm in this situation. Edit 2, it's 5 a.m, I have work in 3 hours and I'm running off a couple hours of sleep. I'm going to take a shower and head into work a little early to avoid Sarah and stew on this. Thanks to the supportive people here, and a big raspberry to the dillholes who keep saying I should figure out whatever good reason my soon-to-be ex-fiancé had for this garbage. Edit 3, I got into work around 7, no one was in the office, so I decided to start pulling off the band-aid and I called my brother. He lives in Australia, so he was still up after having just put his kids to bed. It was hard breaking the news to him about this because I know he has laid out a huge amount of money for flights for him and his family to come, but to his credit as an older brother he didn't mention it one time and just backed me up. He made a great point too. He said, totally paraphrasing, you work in a job where you have to deal with liars and scammers day in and day out. I don't blame you for wanting to have somewhere to go where this isn't a concern. He was totally right about that, and I get now why I'm reacting so strongly to Sarah's participation in this deceit. He also had a great idea. He was going to take his family down to Florida to do some sightseeing and visit the parks. Well, now the kids will be accompanied by their uncle as well. It should be easy since we were going to honeymoon there as well, and we were planning on meeting them for a bit anyway. I'll just rebook everything to be closer to him and his family, and I'll offer Sarah's ticket to either my sister or another family member. I haven't had time to read everyone's comments, but I have answered a few. Right now I'm just sort of making myself sick by drinking cup after cup of coffee and trying to distract myself until the day gets on enough where I can reach out to Marty. Edit 4, just did morning stand-up. My stomach is doing flip-flops from drinking about 2 pots of coffee since I got in here so early, and I absolutely cannot focus and concentrate. I feel like I can't do anything really for my side until I tell Marty what I know, so I'm just going to take a sick day and drive over to his house and see if he's around. If not, I'll call him and track him down. Marty is a teacher who is on break right now, and Evelyn works a 9 to 5 like me, so odds are good this works out. Wish me luck, Reddit. Edit 5, got to Marty's house a little after 10 a.m. He had just put his daughter down for a nap and we had a long, frankly brutal talk, in the kitchen. Basically, he suspected this for a couple of months now, but Evelyn has been very good at covering her tracks, obviously with the assistance of Sarah and a couple of their mutual friends. I unfortunately do not have all 6 months of text messages, just a couple of dozen screenshots I sent to myself from Sarah's phone, but I gave him what I have and offered to help him however I could. I am a field analyst in the SIU department of a mid-sized insurer specializing in workers' compensation fraud, so I know a few things and a few people. Anyway, I am now working from my laptop in my almost brother-in-law's kitchen trying to salvage whatever I can. I'm going to have to talk to Sarah this evening and get the word out as fast as I can to my friends and family now that I know I won't screw Marty over. So far I managed to rebook most of the honeymoon, although I had a problem with the ticket because Sarah was flying under her maiden name and our carrier has a surname rule for name changes. Anyway, they did allow me to cancel and get a partial refund and rebook to my sister who will be accompanying her 2 brothers and nieces to Florida in a couple of weeks. I'm holding off on canceling the venues until after I talk to Sarah because I don't want to tip anyone off until Marty gets his chance to confront Evelyn, but I will absolutely be letting my family and friends know this afternoon sometime and beg them to keep it close. I'm basically in a frenzy right now canceling stuff I can cancel and I'm heading down to the bank in a few to open a new account and getting my bill/pay sorted out. The finances. Some people have mentioned them, but it should be pretty good. The mortgage is in my name since we were not married and I have the bigger income, but Sarah did contribute about $20,000 versus my $60,000 towards the down payment. I will have to probably pay her out that money and some portion of the mortgage payments for the last 16 months, but it could be worse. P.S. How come so many are confused regarding brother and brother-in-law? Edit 6. I'm going to go silent for a while. This post has already been circulating around TikTok and has gone way beyond what I thought it ever would when I was freaking out in the middle of the night. First off, I want to say something here. I do not hate Sarah. I don't approve of what she did. I frankly find it repulsive and I'm shocked by uncovering how two-faced she can be and how she treats people, but I don't hate her. I am just incredibly sad about everything and the I'm screwed part of my post is really the short time frame I have to work under. Basically, our relationship is in a state where I cannot get married to her, but we're supposed to get married in 2 weeks. Maybe if we had 2 months, or better yet, a year or so to work through this, my approach might be vastly different, but I don't have that luxury. I have to move now. There's just no way I can enter into marriage with the state our relationship is in now, so I'm not going to. End of discussion, guys. Anyway, I will report back later tonight with how everything today went. Hopefully it will be less traumatic than I'm anticipating. Edit 7. I have no idea how long a Reddit post can be as I've never written such a long one before in my life, so I hope that this goes through. It's about 8:30 p.m. right now and I'm writing this from my buddy's house. His name is Mark and a former coworker of mine that is also in the same field of work. As I mentioned in a previous update, I work as a field analyst in the SIU department of a decent-sized insurance carrier. For people who don't know what that is, I'm basically a private detective. My job is to investigate what we think might be fraudulent claims in regards to workers' compensation. Anyway, as I kind of hinted at, Marty asked for my help in finding out who the other guy was that Evelyn was cheating on him with. All we had to go on was a name. Let's call him Jake. The first thing I did was not some major amount of sleuthing. It was basically just going through LinkedIn trying to find the guy through Evelyn's connections, but that brought up nothing, which I thought was strange. Marty had told me that Evelyn was supposed to go out for drinks tonight after work and that she said she wouldn't be home until around 9 or 10. He didn't have to tell me what he suspected since I pretty much understood right away. I told him that I would help him but he needed to come with me. I then contacted my buddy Mark, explained the situation to him and had him agree to meet us later in the day. The first thing we did was drive over to Marty's parents' house so that they could watch their granddaughter. I don't know what Marty told them as I waited in the car. After that, we went to Evelyn's place of work. It's one of those large commercial strip mall type centers with all of these nondescript offices in a row and a large, non-gated car park. We drove around until we found Evelyn's car and then I had Marty unlock it with a second set of keys. I then gave Marty a voice-activated recorder and a GPS tracker to place in the car. Once done with that, we left, parked a bit down the street and waited for my friend to arrive and for Evelyn to leave the business. Mark shows up about 20 minutes later, hops in the car with us and around an hour after that Evelyn comes out of her office with 2 of her girlfriends and a tall, younger-looking man with sandy blonde hair. They are obviously holding hands and I'm like, damn Evelyn, you're making it easy for me. I take a couple of pictures from the car and then wait for Evelyn to leave in hers and I start tracking her. At first I thought she might go right to a hotel or something, but she didn't. Instead she drove to a reasonably nice bar and grill in a nice section of town and parked on the street. I drove by her as she was getting out of her car and entering the establishment and then found my own parking spot and went over the plan. First we sent Mark in, since no one knew him. He had basically 2 jobs. First, try to get any compromising pictures he could of Evelyn and Jake, and second to be my alibi. Marty and I waited in the car for around 20 minutes until I got the first in the series of text messages from Mark. They were pictures of Evelyn and Jake making out in front of their 2 female coworkers. Marty's suspicions right, they were helping Evelyn hide the affair from him. He was obviously very upset and angry. Evidently one of the coworkers is married and as a couple they are good friends with Marty and Evelyn, both of them having toddlers around the same age. I asked Marty if that's enough for him but he says he still really wants to know who this guy is. I try to tell him that we can find out later, but he's practically begging me at this point, so I tell him to wait, text Mark that I'm coming in and then enter the bar myself. First thing I see is Evelyn and her crew laughing and drinking at one of those tall round tables near the front window as I enter. I stop for a moment, pretend to be surprised and then call out to Evelyn. Evelyn. Hi. What are you doing here? She's obviously shocked to see me and everyone around her tenses up immediately. Evelyn quickly introduces me as her sister's fiancé and says that we are getting married in 2 weeks. There are a lot of congratulations from everyone. I thank them and then stick out my hand to the blonde guy and introduce myself with my full name, hoping that he'll respond in kind. He does and I'm a bit taken aback. He's not named Jake. I introduce myself to everyone else and then tell Evelyn that I'm here to meet a coworker. I wave to Mark, and then excuse myself. Once I get over to Mark, I tell him the guy's name and we both whip out our phones and go to work. It doesn't take long for us to find him. He's got social media profiles and a couple of court case judgments against him. Everything sort of falls into place when we find out that Jake is his middle name. At this point I'm basically just grateful that Evelyn isn't cheating on Marty with 2 different coworkers. Turns out that Jake is 26, married and has a 1-year-old daughter. This just keeps getting better, worse. Anyway, I text Marty the guy's name and I decide I want to push my luck and tell him to wait a few more minutes. Basically, I'm playing babysitter here at the bar. I'm totally visible to Evelyn and her crew. I can see out of the corner of my eye that no one is particularly happy about this and my presence is really ruining the night. This is good. I'll let this go on for about 10 minutes and then tell Marty to text Evelyn that he's spending the night at his parents' house with their daughter. It doesn't take long after that until I catch Evelyn taking out her phone, showing it to Jake and then everyone deciding to pack up. Evelyn comes over to me, says good night and asks me if Sarah and I want to come over for dinner this weekend. I smile and say that sounds like a great idea and wish her and her coworkers a good night. Mark and I wait for them to leave, then pay our bill and hurry back to the waiting Marty. There's a bit of hesitation here, because we don't know exactly what Evelyn was going to do. Like I half assumed she might have already booked a hotel room and was heading there, which would have made everything a lot more complicated and limited what I could do, but it turns out that tonight was probably meant to be just drinks at the bar and it wasn't until Marty decided to spend the night at his parents that it turned into something more. Evelyn made a beeline for home and we followed behind her way out of sight and parked down the street. It didn't take long after that until another car pulled into Marty's driveway and we saw Jake get out, go up to the door, knock and be greeted by Evelyn. They went inside together. Now, at this point it's about 7:30 and I have my own stuff to do tonight, and I think that as a friend, I've done pretty much all I can do for Marty and he can handle the rest himself. I mean, I feel bad for the guy, definitely, but I don't want to get any more involved in this drama than I already am, and being the wingman for him while he confronts his cheating wife is a bit much for me considering my situation. Marty says it's fine, that he'll do the rest of it himself. Guess he's more of a man than you thought, Evelyn. He goes to Evelyn's car, retrieves my gear, and we bid each other goodbye. That was almost 2 hours ago. I did get one text message from Marty saying it was done and he was going to his parents' house, for real this time, but my phone hasn't been blowing up, so I don't know what's been going on with Evelyn, and I've been at Mark since then. I think that basically concludes my part in Marty's story. If he was smart and listened to my advice, he was recording with his phone when he entered the house. I'll find out later. Anyway, my biggest priority now is to head home and tell Sarah that the wedding is off. She's almost 100% going to take it badly, there's no way she won't, but like I said, I just can't get married to her right now. I don't know what the future holds for us, or if we will be done with each other or not, but definitely we are not getting married anytime soon. Also, for people who keep saying why didn't you talk to her first? Why didn't you confront her? I have to say, are you people stupid? She stone cold lied in front of me to her brother-in-law that she has known for about 10 years and purportedly thinks is a really great husband and father. Maybe you are naive enough to think that someone can lie that coldly to someone they are supposed to care about and then tell you the truth, but I'm not wired that way. Until that moment I never had cause to ever second guess Sarah or not trust her, but she was literally untrustworthy in front of my face and I'm supposed to let it slide or expect her to be honest to me? I guess you don't know what it's like to have your entire view of someone shift in an instant. It's disorienting and frankly, a bit panic-inducing. I'm actually impressed I kept my head and followed my instincts instead of pressing her right away because it led me to the truth. It would have been ridiculously easy for her to lie to me and then delete those text messages, and if she had done that then I would never have read the horrible things she said, never seen how she can be so duplicitous and two-faced, and never realized how little I actually knew about her. I'm going home to talk to Sarah. I'll update later to let everyone know what the final verdict is. Don't expect it to be a good one. Edit 8. Well, I had the talk with Sarah last night. It was pretty insane. I'm honestly burnt out and still exhausted even though I took another sick day and slept in until almost 11:15. Sleep deficit is real. I know everyone is thirsty for updates, but as much as it's therapy for me to write them I am just absolutely drained, and as you may have noticed, I don't know how to be short, just call it a character trait from my profession and the endless amount of minutiae-filled reports I've written. I will give the TL, doctor, and I promise to do a proper update later. Long story short, I came home to talk to Sarah about canceling the wedding and found her comforting Evelyn on the couch. I almost turned around and walked out but didn't. Words were exchanged. Tears were had. People got really angry and the cops were called. I collapsed and slept for like 10 hours and my phone is practically glowing from the heat of a bajillion unread messages and missed calls. If it vibrates anymore I'm going to take it to Evelyn's office and charge $10 a minute to sit on it. Stuff is really up in the air. I have a lot to do today. My family already knew what was going on by yesterday afternoon, but I need to contact some friends today and get a move on other things. I'm just going to answer a couple and then bug out for a few to get stuff done. First, I am not James Bond. I am the guy that follows around the disabled construction worker to his Zumba class or skydiving lesson. I've been doing it for about 5 years and I'm pretty good at it. Nothing I did went beyond a $50 GPS you can buy from Amazon and a tiny bit of social engineering. You might be surprised how far social engineering can get you, but whatever. Second, I'm off the clock on the mysterious case of Marty and the Hobag Hobgoblin. Whatever Marty does with the info he has, including contacting the other wife, is on him. I'm not interjecting myself into this mess any more than I have. Marty is a good friend, but I have my own little world collapsing right now, and now that I don't have my moral indignation to distract me, it's becoming a bigger burden than I've been letting on. Third, I am not an aspiring screenwriter or novelist. I do, however, write a lot of reports. You have no idea. Most of my life is actually spent hunched over a laptop writing a report, or transcribing statements. For every hour I spend doing field work, I probably spend 10 doing paperwork or research. Fourth, you are right that I was wrong to leave Marty to go it alone. I didn't have any fear, not even an iota, that Marty would do anything stupid, but I didn't properly take into the account the risk to him. That's a personal failing of mine. It's not that I don't care, I just tend to estimate that other people handle things like I do, and hence, Marty was doing something that I would do, so I didn't question it like I should have. I know this is a problem of mine and I'm working on it, but I'm also not in the best place emotionally, so my EQ was low in the situation. Last, people saying you don't know the whole situation. What if Marty was an abuser? Yada, yada, yada. No buddy, you don't know the whole situation. I do. I read 6 months of text messages. I know why Evelyn did what she did. I know how she feels about Marty. I know how my ex-fiancé played along with this. I'm just not sharing it because it's vile, but I know, and it played a big part in how I've acted in the last day and a half. Trust me, if Sarah had done something, anything other than encouraging and egging on Evelyn, we'd all probably not be here. But she did, so we are. Anyway, that's it from me. I will try to update again in the next few days with the whole fallout, but I am probably going to be mostly off Reddit for now. Best of luck to everyone and thank you to all the people backing me up. It meant a lot to me and helped keep me sane. Well, some semblance of sane anyway. August 8th, 2023 update. Hi, it's me again. I want to thank everyone who has sent me kind messages and support here on Reddit and even on other platforms. This has really blown up and frankly it's totally bizarre to see my life plastered all over the internet, but it's also nice to see so many people seeming to be genuinely concerned for me. It helps a lot. At first I had a bit of trepidation about how visible this became, like what have I done? But since this past weekend I decided to just roll with it. After all, the cat is already out of the bag and I really believe I've done nothing wrong here, despite a small minority of commentators saying otherwise. I guess there is a lot to go over and so much has happened. Most of it, if I'm honest, hasn't been that great. Well, it's actually been downright shitty, but I'll get to that. For people who are just following along, the link to my original post is here. I'm getting married in 2 weeks and I'm totally screwed. First off, I left Mark's house pretty late that night. Sarah already knew I was out discussing business with him, although she had no idea that the business was actually her sister's affair. But still, it was getting to an unreasonable hour, mostly because I was trying to get up the nerve to go home and face her. After about 2 or 3 pep talks from Mark, I finally got off my keister and texted Sarah I was coming home and left in my car. As I said in the last update, I was pretty surprised when I got there because when I walked into the house, Evelyn was crying on the couch with Sarah. I hadn't seen Evelyn's car in the driveway when I came home, so this was probably the last thing I was expecting. I froze for a moment and almost turned around and left. This was not how I imagined this going down and I knew that Evelyn's presence was going to make a bad situation a million times worse. Still, I had a timetable that I wanted to move on. I had friends I needed to notify and wedding preparations to cancel and the proverbial clock was ticking in the back of my head. When I entered the room, both Sarah and Evelyn looked up at me in acknowledgement, but the tirade of accusations never came. I just stared back, raising my eyes in question. The moment passed and Evelyn went back to crying, Sarah back to comforting, and I let it awkwardly hang in the air for half a minute while I thought. It seemed that Marty hadn't mentioned my assistance in the uncovering of Evelyn's affair. I decided to play dumb. Not for any reason other than I wanted to see how Sarah reacted. I took a seat on a recliner, put down my laptop bag and took my phone out of pocket. I made it look like I was fidgeting with it and then asked them what's going on. Evelyn just continued to cry, but Sarah looked at me and said Marty is divorcing Evie. Well, yes, I figured as much. I decided to push ahead with the obvious question. What for? I asked her. Sarah stopped patting Evelyn's back for a moment and looked at me. I could almost see her face twist and contort. Imagine the look a 5-year-old makes when you tell them to eat their broccoli or finish their lima beans. Evelyn shot Sarah a look that I didn't need to be a sister to understand, and there was a pregnant pause until Sarah finally said, she cheated on him. Now, I have to admit, this response freaking floored me. This was absolutely not what I was expecting. Sure, the more cynical readers here might think, well, the cat was out of the bag, so there's no point in hiding it, and yes, that's true, but it's also true that she could have just as easily feigned ignorance, or even worded it another way, like Marty accused Evie of cheating instead of basically confirming it to my face. Maybe I'm being pedantic here, but it's part of my job to pay attention to not only what people say, but how they say it. Evelyn wasn't happy about this. She kind of crumpled into the couch a bit and did this strange combination of a sigh and sob at the same time. I wanted to press on, go for the gold to sort of speak, but I must have stammered a bit. Sarah probably interpreted as shock, and well, she would have been right in a sense, just not how she assumed. Did you know? Sarah didn't say anything. She just nodded, her hand still rubbing her sister's shoulder. I didn't hesitate and asked for the obvious follow-up. How long? The answer came back a lot easier than I thought it would. 6 months. I was shocked by how easily she admitted to it. Evelyn was shocked as well. She smacked her sister's hand off her, and I think even Sarah was a little shocked at saying it out loud. I leaned back in the recliner and rubbed my face. Time to tug the rest of that band-aid clear off. We're not getting married. There were 2 looks like stunned goats and a chorus of huh? What? From both sisters. I stood up and repeated myself. We're not getting married. I can't marry someone who would cover up adultery, especially not for 6 months. Sarah sprang off the couch and opened her arms. The body language was, you can't be serious? But I just put my hands in front of myself. I'm serious. I don't like this, not one bit. I don't like that you took part in this, and I can't get married to you with how I feel. It would be a mistake. The waterworks started immediately, and even Evelyn did that thing with her mouth that looks like a perch trying to suck air. There were wails from Sarah, accusations of not loving her, appeals to my sense of duty, to the loss of money, the inconvenience to all our friends, the embarrassment of it all. It was frankly nothing I hadn't already thought about, but it definitely felt different hearing Sarah say it through body-racking sobs. It was at this point, I probably made a big mistake. Well, maybe not, because I have no idea how long Marty would have kept my involvement in everything off the books, but in an effort to convince Sarah of the finality of it all, I said, look, I already canceled the honeymoon. It's not happening. I knew it was a bomb the second it left my mouth, and the explosion was damn near immediate. Evelyn, to her credit, had always been pretty quick on the uptake, which is probably how she had managed to fool her husband for so long. I could almost see the realization dawning on her when she put it all together with my appearance at the bar earlier in the evening. She screamed, "You son of a bitch," and flew across the room at me. Now, I'm not a huge guy, but I'm no slouch either, but the force that Evelyn flung herself at me had me staggering backwards, and I barely had enough time to get my hands up before she started raking my face with her fingernails. I almost lost the phone I still had in my hand, but still managed to push her away and say very loudly, "Evelyn, get off me. Sarah, get your sister under control." Evelyn made another lunge for me, but surprisingly Sarah did exactly what I asked her to and wrapped her arms around her sister's waist and held her in place. I looked at Evelyn and yelled, "Get out of here right now or I'm calling the police," holding my phone up for emphasis. Sarah asked both of us to calm down. She said to me, she doesn't have anywhere to go right now, and Marty took her car keys. That explained the lack of a car in the driveway, but I didn't care. I was 100% through with Evelyn, and I was going to make sure she knew it. I marched into my home office and locked the door and dialed the popo. I told them I had been attacked by my fiance's sister and had locked myself in my office, that I was bleeding from my face, Evelyn had scratched me pretty good along the inside of my left eye, and that my vision was blurry and I feared for my life. I even told them that I had recorded the entire altercation on my phone. Just as I was finishing up my conversation, Sarah comes knocking on the door. Please come out, we need to talk about this. And please, I love you, don't do this. We don't need to do this. And even Evelyn is sorry, she wants to apologize. I'm pretty sure that last one was a lie, but Sarah was obviously losing her shit. I didn't answer her, and her attempts to cajole me out of the office ended probably right when the police rocked up to our front door. I could hear Sarah talking to them, and I decided to come out. The cops were 2 males, one of them looked younger than me, maybe around Sarah's age, and the other one looked older and more annoyed about life in general. I introduced myself, pointed at Evelyn, stating that she attacked me, and offered to show the cops the recording I made. The younger one asked me if I wanted to press charges. I said yes. He asked me again if I wanted to press charges. I said yes again. At this point, both cops looked at each other, and before the young cop could open his mouth again, I said, "Yes, damn it, I want to press charges. I have video evidence, and this is going to court, or else I'm going to call up your boss." I dropped his name here, and asked him to come down and do it himself. I think they were pretty surprised that I knew his name, not that we are friends or anything, but given my line of work I spend plenty of time interfacing with local law enforcement, and I have met most of the brass, or talked to them on the phone a couple of times in the last few years. Honestly, at this point, I was getting pretty hot under the collar, and while I get what these guys were thinking, I don't agree with it at all. Facts are facts. Sure, I might not be bleeding out on the floor, but Evelyn assaulted me in my own home and I wanted her gone. Thankfully the situation didn't immediately escalate, and the 2 officers handcuffed Evelyn and put her in the back of the patrol car. She was squealing and crying like some sort of gibbering maniac the entire time. Sarah wasn't much better. She just kept going, "No, please, no," over and over again. At this point, the younger cop circled back and asked us if everything was okay here. I just told him I was going to bed. He asked Sarah again, and she didn't immediately answer, so he goes, "Is everything okay here, ma'am?" It was clear what he was fishing for. At this point I really disliked this guy, but I bit my lip. Sarah finally realized that the cop was addressing her, and she just nodded at him. Obviously the guy is not satisfied with this and starts to ask her again, at which point I interject and say, "If you want to go on a fishing expedition, you might want to do it over there on the lawn where my doorbell camera isn't recording you." I think at this point I had pushed my luck with this guy one too many times, but what could I do? I think I was probably about 30 seconds from getting the cuff slapped on me until his partner came up and basically pulled him away. He was an older man, probably in his late 50s, and probably didn't want to process 2 arrests right at the beginning of his shift, especially when one of them was obviously going to be more trouble than it was worth. I'm pretty sure he talked him out of it and they left, carrying Evelyn away and hopefully out of my life forever. At this point, I'm thinking about if I want to stay here or not. The fact that my parents live a couple of hours away combined with the thought of about how poor I'm going to be in the short term here ruled out either their place or a hotel, so I just decided to sleep in the guest room. Sarah made some futile efforts to get me to engage with her in conversation, or to sleep in our bed, but I just told her we'd talk tomorrow and that I was tired and didn't want to be disturbed. Thankfully she let me be and I crashed hard. Harder than I had in years, which pretty much brings us up to speed to the last update. But dear friends of Reddit, let me tell you this, the next day was by far the weirdest effing day of my life. To start with, I woke up at 11 a.m. Sarah was still home, she had cleaned the house from top to bottom. I mean, the floor sparkled. The toilet shined. I could lick the linoleum in the bathroom and it'd probably be mini fresh. She had obviously been busy, but when she saw me she sort of hovered out of immediate range, not quite engaging, but looking like she wanted to say something. I get it. Last night was traumatic for everyone and she was probably uncertain, like, did I just cancel the wedding in the heat of the moment? Was I serious about this? Was I really angry? I took a deep breath and told her we needed to finish talking. She tried to sit next to me on the couch and I thought about rebuffing her, but I didn't. We were not getting married, but I didn't need to act like I hated her, because truthfully, I didn't. I was disappointed in her, decently disgusted by some of the things I had read in her text exchanges between her sister, but we were both hurting here and I didn't want to make it any worse, or escalate things to a point where life could get any more complicated than it already was. It took some more convincing on my part for Sarah to truly and fully believe the wedding was off. She was not taking it well, hell that's an understatement, she was a wreck. I think she was hyperventilating a few times. I was holding it together better, but obviously not only was this my idea, I'd also had longer to come to terms with it. Finally she asked the serious question. What about us? I know I'm going to get a lot of hate from people for this, especially the kind of Redditors that think every infraction in a relationship is grounds for nuking it from orbit, and indeed one could even say that my calling off the wedding was like dropping a Moab on our 6-year partnership, but truthfully I didn't have an answer for Sarah in that moment. I just didn't know and I told her so. I said, I read all those text messages and it showed me a side of her that I didn't know existed and that I wasn't certain about her, or our relationship anymore. I said I couldn't understand why she would go along with Evelyn putting down Marty and joining in, and even egging her on and cheating on not only him, but their daughter too. She just kept saying, I know, it was wrong, I know. I asked her for an explanation, but she couldn't provide one. She just said that she got carried away and that she had to choose her sister. I told her that I thought a good sister was someone who kept you on the straight and narrow and didn't give you a free pass to be a douchebag. She agreed with me and said that she would do better, but that Evelyn had always been the boss when they were kids and she was always the follower. I get this, I have an older sibling too, and while I'm a bit more independent, I also spent the last 18 years of my life with him living on the other side of the planet except for the odd, occasional visit around Thanksgiving or Christmas. But still, maybe I had a leg up on Sarah because my older sibling was a decent guy while Evelyn was a piece of trash. Now here is where I get the second major effing shock of my life in like 48 hours. Sarah says to me, it's not fair. It's not fair. What's not fair? I ask her. You were sexting that bimbo wife Mandy girl on Instagram last year and I got over it. I was so hurt, but I got over it. Why can't you get over this? Why? Huh? What? What the hell is she talking about? Who is this bimbo wife Mandy? Like I have no effing clue. I ask her if she was high or having a psychotic break. Like, okay, that was mean of me, but I have absolutely not been doing cyber sex or sexting or whatever with anyone, especially not some Instagram girl. I'm protesting pretty loudly at this point and Sarah is yelling at me through her tears, telling me that she saw the messages last year and that she decided to not confront me because I had stopped it. Evidently she had been checking my socials from my home computer when I am at work, which should have been really boring because I have only family and a couple of work friends on there. I try to make this case to her, offering to let her log into all my accounts and check for herself, but she's just calling me a liar and a pervert and all sorts of shit. She starts throwing stuff at me and so things are getting out of hand and I tell her that if she throws one more thing I'll have her taken out of this house just like her sister. She swears at me and stomps off to the master bedroom and slams the door. Now, at this point I am so damn confused I barely know what to think. I head into my office, fire up my desktop and type bimbo wife Mandy into Google. Sure enough there is an Instagram, a Twitter, a Reddit even and of course, an OnlyFans. I click on one of the Instagram links and up comes a post of an extremely busty woman, like clearly pushing the limits of science and technology and oh guess where she's from. Australia. Well everyone, remember all the nice stuff I was saying about my brother? Guess who was staying with us last Christmas all the way from Australia? Guess who I told, sure, go ahead and use my office computer to play games if you have jet lag? As far as I can tell, my brother, after his wife and kids went to sleep, logged into either Insta, or something and was probably paying money to sex with this girl. What a great effing guy. Now, I would love to call my brother and not only confirm my suspicions, but also give him a goddamn earful, but it's like 2 or 3 in the morning there so it's going to have to wait, but I'm crawling the walls here trying to sort out how I feel about everything. I feel totally let down by everyone. I think to myself, damn, what is this world coming to? For a brief moment, I try to connect the dots between whatever the hell Sarah saw my brother do and what she did with Evelyn, but try as I might it doesn't really come together. Maybe she's a more tolerant or forgiving person than I am, which is why she didn't confront me when she saw this, but I wish she had. It would have given me an opportunity to directly tell her my whole personal stance on these things and to even show her how I would act. It might have influenced her in a good way later on, or maybe it wouldn't have mattered, I don't know. All I know is that this post is becoming a novel and I have blown off most of the morning when I should be working to get this out of my head and onto this page. I feel better for doing it, but there is still probably another 2 to 3 posts left to tell. I'm not going to post them to this subreddit anymore. I'm not sure that they'd let me, but I will try to quietly update my profile in the next day or 2 with the rest of the blowout, talking to my brother, talking to my parents and Sarah's parents, and finally where Sarah and I stand. One thing that I can say however is it seems like most of my immediate family relationships are incredibly strained for various reasons. My parents are largely supportive, but that's becoming less so now that the reality of the financial loss is setting in. Yes, the marriage is still off. That was pretty much a certainty from the get-go. Sarah's parents are a bit more pissed and I'm sure they are sticking pins in voodoo dolls crafted in my image right now. Evelyn, for people who are wondering, is no longer in jail. She got Sarah to bail her out and I even laid into Sarah for that, calling her sister's underling, which I think actually struck a chord with her because she wrote me like a 20-page letter about how her sister always bossed her around throughout her entire childhood. I've read it twice now and I wish we had talked about this pretty much any time within the last 6 years. Maybe things would be different. I don't know. Anyway, Reddit, if anyone is still interested, expect a final chapter of this saga in like a day or two and maybe a follow-up after the former wedding date passes. August 10th, 2023 update. This update has taken longer to get around to than I originally intended. A lot of things have happened over the last couple of days that have kept me pretty busy, and it really wasn't until today when I had some free time after lunch that I could sit down and get this out. I'll try to get through as much as I can. Before that, however, I just want to mention a couple of things in response to comments from the last post. I'll try to be brief. Firstly, I don't know much of what's going on with Marty and his divorce, other than to my knowledge, he's still divorcing her. Obviously no papers or anything, but the intention is clear. In addition to that, I'm not really in the position to be advocating for any sort of course of action that Marty should take, or offering him legal advice, or assisting him in doing anything to the other man, or tracking down the other man's wife, etc. Marty is a grown-ass man and he can do whatever he wants with the situation, and my position, as his friend, is just to support him and offer advice, if he asks for it. Secondly, this isn't some sort of guerrilla marketing for an OnlyFans girl. If it was, I should have done it on the first post which hit the front page of Reddit and was seen by over 3 million people. Also, given that this post got so popular on Reddit, it's not really a surprise that bimbo wife Mandy, another Redditor, happened to be following the story and saw her name. It could have easily been any other of the hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands, of girls who use Reddit to post their pictures. And as a brief aside, speaking of Mandy, I have indeed talked to her. She was actually quite helpful in confirming something for me, and as a person she seems quite nice, but guys, there is no romance plans here in the future. Mandy is married, evidently quite happily so, and for almost 2 decades. I think the handle bimbo wife Mandy should have given that away, and frankly while her husband must be cool with it, she's way too much for a mere insurance guy like me to handle. Seriously. So, with that all out of the way, onto the update. Last time I wrote in, I ended it up with me assuming that my brother had used my office computer to chat with Mandy, but it was too late, his time, for me to contact him. I am one of those guys that once a problem is put in front of him, I must be actively working on trying to solve it. This is great for my career choice, but in situations like this, all I was doing was driving myself insane. So, I decided to take a deep breath, leave everything until later and carry on with what I needed to do. First thing up was attempting to contact every person from my side that I had invited to the wedding that I had not yet informed about its cancellation. As you may recall, I had already informed my parents and had them contact my relatives on the day I made up my mind, but only myself and Sarah have the complete guest list, so I needed to do the rest myself. Out of respect for my friends, I decided to call instead of text, but this might have been a bad idea since every phone call typically resulted in a rather lengthy explanation of why I was canceling the wedding. I know I could have given some other excuse, but I wanted people to know that I wasn't being frivolous or just experiencing something inane like cold feet. It was important, not just for my own reputation, but I think in order to show respect to the people who had agreed to come on that day to support myself and Sarah as a couple. Because of this, it wasn't until late into the evening when I finally managed to contact everyone, which meant it was now morning time in Australia. I knew what I needed to do, but I wanted to make sure that my ducks were all in a row, so I took a breather and made a sandwich in the kitchen. I noticed that Sarah wasn't home. I had no idea when she left and sat down to eat and think about what to do with my brother's situation. Let's call my brother Carl for the sake of shortness here. Now, Carl and I have always been pretty close despite him being 13 years older than me. He was this sort of quasi-parental figure in my life because by the time I became capable of having long-term memories, he was already well on his way to becoming an adult. He was always generous with his time, played with his little brother when other teenagers would probably have avoided such an activity like the plague, and generally seemed very mature and wise to me growing up. Suffice it to say, I respected him greatly. The idea that he had been sexting with a girl who wasn't his wife, in my house, was something that I was still coming to grips with, and I needed to decide what to do. Talking to him about it was obvious, but at this point, given how much of a shambles my relationship with Sarah was, I didn't know if I cared about having him confess just for the sake of clearing my name. Was there anything to salvage anyway? I needed to, for my own sake of propriety, at least yell at him about this and convince him to stop. However, I wasn't sure if I was going to rat him out or not to my Sil. Let's call her Karen. Alright, Carl and Karen at his guys. It all depended on what he told me and if I believed him or not. I finished my meal and logged into Facebook and video called Carl. Now, Carl works mostly from home as a remote office worker since his field is related to IT, and he's almost always available during the day, and today was no exception. It didn't even ring more than once or twice before he answered. We greeted each other, exchanged some pleasantries, and then I just sort of dove into it and asked him if he had been using my computer to sex chat women on the internet when he was visiting me. Carl's face froze and he leaned over out of frame of the camera. He was obviously closing his office door. Yeah, I did. Why? He said to me. I swore under my breath and explained to Carl how Sarah had thought that his flirting was me, since he used my computer. I explained that I wasn't happy to take the hit for him, and I asked him point blank if Karen knew about this or not. He waffled for a few seconds, stumbling over his words, and then looked a bit sheepish and said that no, Karen didn't know, and he'd prefer if it was kept that way. He went on to explain that their relationship had been pretty rough since their youngest was born 4 years ago, mainly in the bedroom department. Carl had always been a pretty private person, especially when it came to intimate details, or at least he had always been that way when talking to his much younger baby brother. However, this time he just let it all lay out. Things had been bad, he had been tired of getting rejected, Karen was always tired no matter what he did or how much he helped out around the house. Eventually this led to problems on his side, some sort of performance anxiety on the few occasions where Karen would actually feel up for some bedroom fun, and things just got worse from there. Basically, he said, there's no amount of socks picked up, laundry folded, dishes washed, or time spent minding children that would get me laid. It was just not happening, so I started to spend time in my office at night working. He even did the finger quotes when saying this. Evidently his working at night turned into a pretty hardcore addiction to OnlyFans sites, which given the relative privacy he had in his office for legitimate work, spiraled out of control pretty quickly. I asked him if he was still doing it and he swore up and down that he wasn't. I thought I believed him when he said it. He seemed to be sincere. But I just had this niggling feeling in the back of my soul that something was off. Maybe it was because of all of the deceit I had encountered recently, but I was doubting my own brother who has really been a stand-up guy to me our entire lives together. I really hated being in this situation. Now, the problem I faced was pretty complex here. First, if I wanted to clear my name, then I would have to get my brother to tell Sarah that it was him all along. However, if he did that, then there was no guarantee that Sarah wouldn't spitefully inform Karen. I personally thought it would be best if Karen knew, but at the same time I didn't know if I felt comfortable potentially dropping a nuke on my brother's marriage over something he not only said he stopped, but is in this sort of moral gray area for me. I didn't have an answer right away as to what to do, but I did urge him to tell his wife about this and to get into marriage counseling. He said that they actually had been going for the last 6 months, and while it was helpful, what had really helped him was getting a prescription for some generic Viagra. I actually did a spit take at that, neatly spraying my computer screen with water. He told me that they had been trying to make sure they have intimate time at least a couple of times a week, and the Viagra had cured him of his performance anxiety to the point where now they were both looking forward to spending time together after the kids went to bed. The general gist of this was something along the lines of, "Hey, this is actually going in the right direction now, please don't screw this up for us." I really didn't want to be in this position, not just for the sake of Carl and Karen, but for my two nieces as well, and if what Carl was telling me was the truth, I could be tossing a firebomb into a relationship that was starting to mend. It was unpredictable what would happen, so yeah, it may disappoint some people, but at the time I felt that the best option I had was to wait and see. I was, after all, going to meet him in a couple of weeks in the flesh, and once I got him alone in a room and a few drinks into him, I was going to definitely get to the bottom of this. It seemed like the best course of action. Anyway, that night I went to bed early. I didn't see Sarah until the next morning. She looked haggard, like she had a distinct lack of sleep. I asked her where she had been, mostly out of habit, after all we had been together for almost 6 years. She told me that she had gone down to the courthouse for Evelyn's arraignment to post bail. The courts here close at 1 p.m. on the weekends, which is why she had disappeared soon after I went into my office, and that afterward she had driven her to her parents' house and spent the night. She made a point of telling me how horrible it was to have to explain to her parents that I had called off the wedding. I asked her if her parents knew the reason why, and she barked, "Of course they do." I tried to remain calm, but by this point in this ordeal I was losing it. I bit back at her, "Are you going to move back there so that they have both girls at home now?" It was childish and petty, but the fact that she bailed Evelyn out of jail annoyed me to no end. "You don't need to be an ass about this," she said, to which I said, "And you don't need to be Evelyn's effing underling." I could see Sarah visibly flinch when I said that to her. It obviously had struck a chord, and the corners of her eyes started to tear up, and I cooled my temper. We just sort of stood there, miles apart in the living room of our house, and didn't say anything for a good solid minute or two until Sarah decided to continue talking. "Our parents are going to be here at 3. I actually face-palmed at this. I was about to go off on her for not consulting me on this, but decided that was just my own ego. After all, I did need to sit down with them and work out the details around the wedding and whatever remaining deposit we had, and I needed to, at least once, face-to-face explain to everyone why it wasn't happening. So fine, let's do this and get it out of the way. I tried to make myself busy, but there isn't much you can do on a Sunday except waste time, and time wasting isn't very enjoyable when you know you are heading into the meat grinder in just a few hours. Still, 3 p.m. came, and so did our parents. We all sat down at the large kitchen table that Sarah had bought just a month after we closed on the house. It was second-hand, from Facebook Marketplace, but she loved it because it was solid oak with a beautiful finish and capable of seating 8, and just as heavy as that sounds. She always wanted to have big dinner parties with our families over, just not like this. The next 3 hours were grueling. No one was happy, nor should they be, I guess. The best support I could get came unsurprisingly from my own parents, but even that was tempered. Essentially along the lines of, well, it's his decision to make, which more or less means, yeah, we think this is crazy too, but we're still backing him. Honestly, that was fine with me. I didn't need my parents to get the stigma by association of canceling the wedding. I was fine with owning that. Eventually we worked out a decent deal in regards to the wedding. We would try to get back whatever money we could, split it back however it was contributed. Some things like the honeymoon were all paid by me, or the flowers were all paid for by Sarah's parents, and then eat whatever losses there were communally. However, when it came to the subject of the house, Sarah vehemently objected to my idea of paying back her or her parents for the deposit. Basically, she didn't intend to move. Now, as you might imagine, Sarah and I hadn't really talked about the us or us living together situation in too much detail. The fact that I even brought up settling the house equity seemed to shock her, because the implication here is that I expect her to move out of our home. She threw a fit, and I don't blame her. I should have settled our relationship status with her first before trying to negotiate a payment plan with her parents. It really tipped my hand to everyone about how I was feeling about our relationship, and while I think our parents expected it, or at least understood, Sarah was beside herself. She was absolutely not accepting of us breaking up over this, and she made it clear. "I am not moving out of my house, and we are not breaking up," she declared. And that's pretty much how my Sunday night ended. After our parents left, Sarah and I tried to talk it out some more, but we kept running in circles around each other, and I had to curb my natural inclination to run her down until we got a resolution. Truthfully, I was pretty damn tired as well, and I just wanted to turn off my brain. Believe it or not, we just ended up sitting on the couch and watching a movie together in silence until it was time to go to sleep. We left it there with a "we'll talk about it more tomorrow" and retreated to our separate rooms. On Monday, I woke up to a large handwritten letter slid under the door from Sarah. I took a brief look at the first few pages and decided I would deal with it later and went to work. When I left, Sarah was still in bed. She must have been up late writing that letter. At the office, I rescheduled some meetings and started calling venues and vendors that were on my list. The other ones were being handled by Sarah or her parents. It was a mixed bag of results. The catering people were adamant that I pay most of their fees under the pretense that they had ordered most of the food. I shot back at them over this, like, were they expecting me to eat a week-old steak? But my appeal fell on deaf ears. I tried talking to the woman who ran the catering business and explaining what happened, but that seemed to only firm up her resolve to get as much money as possible out of me. Inversely, the DJ that I had hired for the entertainment was incredibly kind and gave us back almost all of the money. It wasn't much, however. Things went on like this, and during the day between making calls and doing work, I read Sarah's letter. Now, this is 20 pages of written words, so I'm just going to summarize. The gist of it was that ever since childhood Sarah has been bullied by Evelyn, and in response, Sarah's way of dealing with this was to essentially go along with whatever Evelyn wants to hear. She went on to say that it had become sort of a general way of operating in her life, that she was just afraid to rock the boat, to cause a problem, or sometimes even to voice an opinion. I reflected on this because truthfully, when I look back at our relationship with a more critical eye, I kind of think that Sarah was a bit too perfect of a girlfriend. What I mean by that is, she never disagreed with me, never picked her plans over mine, or even really advocated too strongly against anything I wanted to do. She went out of her way to make herself appear useful, and all around acted more or less like a yes woman in our relationship. I mean, we had never even so much as had a minor disagreement in 6 years, let alone a full-blown argument until now. It sounds great from a relationship standpoint, until of course, it's not. I couldn't shake this feeling that Sarah has this deep-seated insecurity and need to make people happy. You know what they call people-pleasing behavior. When I start looking at it this way, a lot of things make sense to me, and I start to realize that despite being with Sarah for 6 years, I don't actually know her that well. It's like she's put up this image around her which is really just a mirror, a reflection of whatever she thinks people want to see, and in the case of our relationship, she's more or less been acting my role of the perfect girlfriend while never really letting me inside to see who she is as a person. Hell, I can't even say that what I saw in those text messages is the real Sarah, because it's almost certainly just another reflection, this time of Evelyn and all her warts and faults. This may sound weird, but it's like we are in this unequal relationship. Whereas maybe she loves me for who I am and how I wear my thoughts on my face and my heart on my sleeve, but maybe I only love her for the mirror she is holding up to my face. I don't know, if this sounds too metaphysical for you, then I'm right there as well. It's like this wisp of an idea that I'm still trying to catch by my fingertips. All I know is that in the last few days I've probably learned more about Sarah than I had in the last 6 years, and the letter she wrote me was the first real view into her childhood that I had glimpsed. That night we talked more about this specifically, about her childhood, about her behavior. The conclusion that we came to is that she needs help. She's a grown woman who is sadly stuck acting like a child, too scared to displease anyone, lest she face her sister's wrath, or her parents' disapproval, or the loss of love from the one she loves. This is no way to have a relationship, and I can say that I feel much more confident and assured that my decision to call off the wedding was the correct one. In fact, it could not be any more correct. That night, after our talk, I went to bed with much less angst than I had in a few days. So, this basically brings me up to our last update, and once again, it's a freaking novel. I won't wait 2 to 3 days to do another one, otherwise I will keep falling forever. For people who have been wondering, the entire situation with my brother is more or less resolved, and I'll get to that tomorrow, but the situation with Sarah and I is still up in the air a bit, but there is a semblance of a plan going forward. I promise I'll get to it as soon as I can, but as you can imagine there is a lot to write and I can only do what I can do. August 31st, 2023 update. Sorry this update took so long to get around to, but to be blunt, after the chaos that happened initially started to die down and my state of hypervigilance started to dwindle, I found myself sinking into a deep depressive funk that sapped most of my will to do almost anything, and recounting the shit show that is my life became really unappealing. However, the date for the wedding has now come and gone, and I'm on vacation with my siblings and my brother's family and starting to really feel like most of this is behind me. So anyway, on to the updates. First off, since this is the thing that seems to really bother people, my brother and his wife are doing fine. Like I said in my last post, I urged my brother to tell Karen about his, what do I call this? Sexting? With the Australian girl known as Bimbo wife Mandy, whom, by the way, is a very lovely person. I sort of hinted in my last update that I had gotten confirmation from Mandy to back up my brother's story, and according to her, the timelines matched up, and not only that, but his account no longer exists. Now, she could be lying to me to protect a customer, but I don't think that's the case, and she seemed like a genuine person. My brother, for his part, did tell his wife what had happened in one of their marriage counseling sessions, and according to him, she took it pretty well and is treating it as water under the bridge. I did pull her aside last week and ask her if she was really okay with this, and she told me, I'll have to paraphrase this a bit, we're not as squeaky clean as you think. Both of us watch porn, and that's basically what I consider this to be. It's not like he was going to run off and have an affair with her. I asked her if she would feel the same way if he had visited a prostitute. It's legal where they live, and she said no, she wouldn't, but he didn't. So I guess that's their clear line. It's a bit different from mine and a lot of really loud people on Reddit, but if the noises I heard coming from their hotel room last night are any indication, they are doing fine and their dead bedroom situation is totally resolved. Honestly, these two are borderline taking advantage right now. Since my sister is taking the place of Sarah, they switched rooms with her and now the kids are with her, and they are both little girls and love having a sleepover with their auntie, and they have 2 babysitters who are happy to take the kids while they run off and do Lord knows what, we know what, but let's not talk about it. Overall, I think I did the right thing in giving him the space to make this right on his own, even though people hounded me for it. I will strongly argue that the situation with my brother and the situation with Evelyn were like comparing night and day. I don't agree that cybering someone you know as a professional sex worker is anywhere near the same ballpark as actively carrying on an affair, and I don't think my actions and how I dealt with it were anything close to how Sarah did. Like I said in my previous post, she not only hid the affair from Marty, she actively engaged in disparaging conversations about him and said several other things that I won't recount here for various reasons. Suffice it to say, I feel good about this choice on my part, and people who don't agree with me can put their heads in an oven for all I care. Next up, I think, is the wedding itself. There isn't much to say here. Sarah and I and our families lost our shirt on it, but that was expected. I forced the caterer who had ordered all that food to either give me back a bigger refund or give me the food, and she chose the latter, which is fair enough. We now have a lot of frozen steak, chicken and fish. It was delivered to my parents' house, and I think they are passing it out to interested parties. Likewise, some wedding gifts from faraway relatives arrived and are at my house until we can send them back, but overall the date just came and passed, and for the sake of both of our sanities, Sarah and I spent it apart. As for the issue with Marty and Evelyn, I don't think this is something that is going to be settled anytime soon. Marty is absolutely divorcing Evelyn, but it's difficult for him, primarily because she's making it difficult by begging him to reconsider. On top of that, school is starting again, and so Marty will be back with his students instead of taking care of their daughter every day. I think that's really hurting him right now, because spending every day with his parents and his kid was really helping him mentally. Also, despite what some people have wished for, Marty hasn't made a big stink about this at Evelyn's work, despite the fact that he probably could get them both fired since it became obvious that they were using work trips to hook up on the company's dime. Nor has he gone and told Jake's wife about the affair either, something I strongly disagree with. When I questioned him about it, all he said is that he's in no big hurry. After all, he has the text messages, the photos from the pub, and the video he took when he entered the house. Basically, he could bury this guy whenever he wants to. I think in some kind of twisted way, hippy-dippy Marty the Birkenstock-wearing teacher is enjoying making this guy sweat it out. Either that, or maybe he's enjoying making Evelyn fully realize her place in the world at this point, just a side piece to a married man. I'm not sure, but Marty has definitely gotten a bit darker over this whole thing, not that I can blame him. Everything I know about Evelyn is secondhand from Sarah, but the way I understand it, she is largely just going to work and coming straight back to her parents' house every day, like a teenager on curfew. I don't think they are pleased with either of their daughters right now, but oddly enough, even though the implosion of Sarah and mine's wedding was extremely public, I think that it's being drowned out by the constant drama that is Evelyn's impending divorce. Sarah said it almost seemed like they forgot about her once they realized that Marty was seriously taking steps to divorce Evelyn, and their concern about having access to their granddaughter. I sort of get that. They are very doting grandparents, and I'm sure their anger at Evelyn is compounded by the fact that their access to their grandchild is going to be essentially cut in half. Now, on to the big event. Sarah and I. First off, I don't think that this update is likely to make anyone happy, not the people who urged me to yeet her out of my life, nor the people who demands that I treat her with sympathy and compassion for her obviously screwed up mental issues. The facts are that aside from the lying and hiding the affair, what shook me the most was probably the way that she carried on with her sister in those text messages. Maybe people would understand me better if I shared them, but I simply refuse to repeat it, and I don't want to get into arguments over their content. Suffice it to say, it was enough for me to reconsider Sarah's complete character, which is largely where I am at today, still considering it. That's not to say that we are still together, definitely not in the way we were an engaged couple, but we haven't completely closed the door on the relationship either. I've come to understand a bit more about what kind of person Sarah is and which parts of her are genuine and which parts are facsimile constructed in order for her to ingratiate herself to people, her sister included. Basically, it helps to be able to put a name to what is going on with her, this people-pleasing behavior. It helps more to understand how it started, her family, with copious examples retold to me, and it further helps that she is actively seeking help for it. On top of that, even though I found her behavior extremely gross and inappropriate, I give her a lot of credit for how she dealt with the situation when I came home that night to find her and Evelyn on our couch. She didn't lie, she didn't minimize, and she largely took accountability for what she did. Remember, at the time she didn't know that I had seen her text messages with Evelyn, and she definitely could have tried to omit her participation, or minimize it some way, but she didn't. She was truthful to me even when she knew it would make her look bad. That actually counts for a lot in my book, which is why I'm looking at simply changing the chapter instead of closing it. To be clear, this isn't a victory for the forgive her and blame everything on the sister crowd, because frankly I haven't forgiven her and our situation is very different now. She has moved back into her old room at her parents' house, much like Evelyn, although Sarah will probably be out of there in a couple weeks because she says the environment is not good for her mental health or getting help with her issues, and I am paying back her equity in the house in fortnightly installments out of my pay until we are all caught up, which will help her defray the costs of getting an apartment on her own. We are definitely not together right now. Sarah really did not want to accept this at first, and I can see her point of view, even be sympathetic to it, but also if she really has these emotional problems that it appears she does, then I felt that pushing the issue could be the way to light a fire under her pants to get her to finally seek some real help for them, and just forgiving her would be tantamount to sweeping everything under the rug, which in the long run would spell disaster for our relationship. I really wish that she had opened up to me earlier before all of this hit the fan, because I'd much rather handle the problem as a loving partner and support her more closely, but she didn't really give me the opportunity to do that, which is a shame, so this is the best I can do at this point. So, basically my situation is more or less just wait and see on the Sarah front. Maybe one, or both of us, will get tired of this and completely throw in the towel and move on completely. It could almost certainly be me, but frankly I've no desire to further complicate my life by being intimate with any other woman right now, so I think if anything we're looking at a period of months down the line here until we get a firm resolution one way or another on this front, and I'm frankly fine with that. Not everything needs to progress at a hyper-emotional breakneck pace, and if I look at my situation, I'm fine. Financially we're separated, we're not living together, and I'm cautiously cynical about the entire situation. I'm also not kidding myself. If at any point I think that Sarah's issues are too big of a deal, or that I can't see us rebuilding trust with each other, then I will dip. I have no interest in prolonging a situation that I see as hopeless, which I guess says it all. I don't think it's hopeless. I just think it's going to be difficult, and I'm open to waiting a bit to see how it plays out, to the point even where I'm seeking my own counselor to help me process the events of the last few weeks, as well as looking into how Sarah and I interacted with each other, because I do actually believe that while I might have been fooled by her, it was partially a willing deception on my part, because who wouldn't love a girlfriend who never disagrees with them, always wants to do what they do and goes out of her way to make sure you're happy before she is. The thing I am struggling with, and maybe Sarah as well, is how much of that is genuine love she has for me and how much of it is just a deeply ingrained need to please other people born out of her fear of rejection and anxiety? I guess, barring throwing in the towel, when we reach the bottom of that question, we'll know the answer to Sarah and mine's relationship. I know it's not the update that everyone wanted, but it's all I got. Maybe check this space in a few months and see how it played out. Once again, thanks everyone who sent me supportive messages, and a pox on the rest of you, lol. Comments. Did you tell Sarah that you have now spoken with that model? Oop, yeah, I cleared up the whole situation with bimbo wife Amanda and my brother, and even offered to get my brother to confirm it, but Sarah believed me straight away. I asked her why she didn't immediately bring it up if it made her so uncomfortable, and she said more or less that she was too afraid to lose me over it, which I pointed out to her was part of the overall problem she has. She agreed with me, and it turned into another long discussion about her insecurities. Like I said in my post above, I understand, at least intellectually, what she is going through, and I'm willing to give this at least a little bit of time to see how the situation evolves, but ultimately I'm not too keen on being in a relationship with someone that essentially practices deception as a way to deal with her insecurities. She really needs to overcome this, not just to have a relationship, but as a person, in life in general. Good luck to you up. It sounds like a very mature way of handling things. Have you asked if she ever cheated on you? Oop, was never really a concern of mine and still isn't. Like I elaborated before, she has been largely attached to my hip for years now, and I mean this. No after work drinks, no girls nights, no weekends away with the girls, nothing like that, and I've had complete access to her phone, social media, etc. since we started living together. I think what she did with Evelyn was shitty, but I also think from understanding her better, that this was her way of not being confrontational with her older, domineering sister. Basically, I know she has some problems, but I don't think that this is one of them, so in his testament, it never crossed my mind to even worry about it, and frankly, due to my line of work, fraud investigation, she'd have to be beyond world class to pull something off like that under my nose. Hell, the whole reason why I called off the wedding was just spurred by me catching her in a single lie. Will I be the asshole for not helping my friend in his bitter divorce from cheating ex-wife? I honestly hope everyone can follow this, because sometimes I can't. I have a friend, Marty, who is currently engaged in a bitter divorce from his wife. She was caught cheating over a month ago, and I was one of the people who helped expose her, so there's a bit of history here. They also have a young child who is living with the husband and being taken care of by his parents when he is at work. Now here is where people are going to have to start keeping score. The STBXW in this situation is actually the sister of my former fiancée, Sarah. We are currently in its complicated kind of relationship. 2 days ago she comes to me and says that she heard her sister and parents conspiring to falsely accuse him of something that would allow for an emergency custody hearing. She wants my help in turning the tables on her sister, and yes, there is some bitterness here. Like I said, it's complicated. Now, even though she is my former fiancée, I think Sarah is a good person and is interested in helping, but I also wonder if she's trying to rope me into the situation to prove to me that she hates her sister. You see, the sister was an accessory to one of the main reasons why Sarah is a former fiancée. My gut instinct is to tell her to just inform Marty and his attorney about what is going on and to wipe our hands of the situation. However, she's urging me to help entrap her sister in some way so that she can turn evidence over to Marty so he can play the highly coveted, at least in divorces, Uno reverse card. Her most convincing argument is that this opportunity will probably not come again. I agree with that, but, assuming for the moment that I actually could help in some way, whipped her for not doing so? Particularly since my motivation is basically just being leery of Sarah's motivation? After all, she could theoretically just testify on Marty's behalf if it came to that. Judgment in the post was, not the asshole. Comment. Just tell Marty what Sarah told you. Plotting to entrap his wife behind your friend's back is not a wise decision, particularly when a child is involved. The divorce sounds complicated enough without the two of you planning something, which sounds like the motivation for Sarah is revenge. Oop, I hear you on this, but the problem I am facing is that me just telling on them isn't really good enough. It's essentially hearsay. I need Sarah to go and front the claims to the lawyer and sign an affidavit, but she's reluctant to do that since it will then be obvious to her parents that she is the one who did them in. Hence why she is asking me to help her collect evidence to pass along to Marty in a more anonymous way. I honestly feel like we've been going around and around on this for the last day or so, but to put it bluntly, she's struggling with dealing with the shit show that will erupt by being willing to testify, especially since she is currently living with her parents. I do get where she is at. She wants to do the right thing, but she's threading the needle in regards to her own situation. The one good thing about the situation is that it won't be too late for her to testify on behalf of her soon-to-be former brother-in-law, so if she waffles a bit, hopefully she will do the right thing in the end. December 5th, 2023 update. It was almost 2 months ago when I made my original post about my former fiancée reaching out to me asking for help in regards to an issue in her family. I think some people had some decent advice in that thread and it really helped me clarify my own thoughts on the matter. Basically, my distrust in the sincerity of Sarah's intentions was both probably overblown on my part, as well as immaterial to what I really should be doing as a friend to both her and Marty. In regards to Sarah, I think that it was very apparent to me that her relationship with me wasn't as important of a motivator in her actions as I was selfishly assuming. She had, still has, to be honest, a huge beef with her sister and feels incredibly horrible about not just her part in Marty's current situation, but how the upheaval has affected her 3-year-old niece. Add on to that a lifetime of family resentment and I think she was keen to do something, anything, to screw over Evelyn. Who wouldn't be? Her reaching out to me was more or less because out of all the people she knows, I would be the one most likely to help and offer good advice. I'll admit to being overly cynical of her trying to use the situation to appear like she was making amends to people and working on her issues, but upon reflection I realized that not everything in her life revolved around me or our relationship. Basically, I need to chill on being distrustful of people when they are finally doing what I would be liking them to do. Lesson learned for anyone who has felt betrayed: you can rob yourself of positive emotions by living in the past and not the present. As for Marty, given that Sarah had given me the heads up about her sister and parents' plot to try and file a false report accusing him of child abuse, I was 100% dead set on informing him as soon as I could, regardless of Sarah's desire to be more subtle. That being said, I did make one last-ditch effort to get Sarah to be the one to reach out and do this, as I thought it might help her mend her relationship with her soon-to-be former brother-in-law and help the process of making amends to both him and her niece. As I guessed, her hesitancy, as well as why she wanted my help, was because her parents were more or less fully on board with this plan and she wasn't quite emotionally strong enough to deal with any potential fallout from them, particularly since she had spent her entire life being bullied by her family, and to make matters worse, she was at their mercy since she was living with them. We discussed it and I gave her a promise that if this came back to her that I would get her a place to live if she needed it. She asked me if I would go with her when she faced Marty, and I almost said yes out of habit, but I declined. I told her that I thought it would be better for everyone if she faced this one alone, and she reluctantly agreed. Obviously I wasn't there when Sarah and Marty met, but I do know it took place at his parents' house. His parents obviously knew about Sarah's role in covering up for Evelyn's infidelity and there were some choice words pointed at her. Fair enough. Sarah told Marty about the plot, then they called Marty's lawyer and she gave a statement. For all the drama preceding it, the meeting was over as quickly as that. One thing that Sarah did say, however, is that she was grateful that Marty let her play with her niece. He didn't have to do that, but it meant a lot to her. I could literally hear the sorrow in her voice, to the point where I had a fleeting thought that maybe Sarah is carrying too much of a burden on her shoulders for what ultimately were Evelyn's actions. To be frank, I don't know how to address this or if I should. I'll try to finish this up quickie since there is a word limit several weeks past. My offer of a place to stay wasn't needed. Sarah managed to get her own apartment not too long after we spoke, although I did speed up the money I was paying her back by a couple of weeks to help facilitate this. Anyway, shortly after she moves out, Evelyn finally makes her move. I don't want to get into exactly what she accused Marty of, but it was pretty vile, as in, something that could get you killed in prison if it was true. Frankly, I was shocked when I heard it because as despicable as Evelyn is, I never thought she was that horrid, nor her parents who seemingly went along with this. As you can imagine, there was an emergency child custody hearing in front of a judge that night, and as they were discussing the charges, Marty's lawyer pulls out a dated and notarized affidavit from Sarah detailing the plot as well as a recorded interview on USB stick. Now, I would love to say that Evelyn ended up in jail or driven out of town, or got her just desserts in some other way, but in truth, we don't know yet. She has some charges against her from this stunt and I'm not privy to what they are. But in all likelihood I don't have much hope that she'll get more than a slap on the wrist, since otherwise our prisons would be filled with acrimonious divorcees. That being said, the custody hearing did not go Evelyn's way and now there is a court order in place granting Marty primary custody and Evelyn must have a court-ordered observer with her when she visits their kid. This order will be in place until the divorce is finalized, which might be coming up soon because I think getting caught out so badly has taken a lot of the wind out of Evelyn's sails to make this divorce difficult. Marty says that her lawyer has been in contact about discussing a settlement, which is a positive sign. And that's pretty much where we are today. As you can imagine, Sarah is pretty much persona non grata with her family right now, and it's not likely to change even though it is the holidays. She accepted that this would likely be the fact if she went ahead and gave a statement, so she says she was prepared for it, but I can tell that even though her family has largely treated her like dog shit for most of her life, it still pains her to have contact cut like this. She jokes to me that it's helping me getting past my issues with them, but I can tell it still hurts. A lot of people who know about my backstory here will probably be pissed about this, but I rather impulsively offered for Sarah to help me spend my parents' airline miles and travel with me to Australia to visit my brother and his family. I honestly didn't think she would accept because she's a teacher and they're not quite on break yet, but she surprised me. My brother has a very large property in semi-rural Queensland with a few bungalows on it. We cleaned out the snakes yesterday and Sarah and I are neighbors who are looking forward to doing some surfing on Christmas Day. Our relationship is still very much complicated, hence the separate accommodations, but I have to admit that I'm feeling better about things in general. My biggest issue with Sarah, and why I cancelled our wedding, was because I didn't understand how she could act how she did with her sister. Now, knowing the backstory here between the two and furthermore, seeing her literally torch that relationship with the fury of 1,000 suns, it's hard for me to still be seriously worried about Evelyn's influence on her. It'd require a degree of paranoia that not only I don't possess, but one that would probably qualify as a mental illness. Still, we're both taking it slow. To be frank, we're in this sort of weird exclusive platonic relationship. It obviously can't last, and while Sarah has made it pretty clear how she would like to resolve the situation, I'm being a bit cagey. It's not like I don't love her, that hasn't really been an issue. I can't even say that it's not that I don't trust her, since most of the reasons why I felt that way have been excised like a tumor. It's just that I am unsure about the trajectory of our relationship. I'm not hankering to rush back to the altar anytime soon, and I think most of my friends would disown me if I did, given I just cancelled a wedding at the last moment a few months ago. Sarah knows this and she's been largely accepting of it, but even if she tells me that she doesn't care about getting married, I can't help but feel like she secretly does. I guess the best way for me to explain my thinking is that the relationship we had which had put us on the path to marriage is done and gone. Maybe we will make another one that will head in that same direction someday, but I'm no longer sure that this is something I want, and it's not just Sarah, it's with anyone. I guess all of the marital problems I've seen this last half year have left a bad taste in my mouth. In any case, whatever future we do have together will have to accommodate these feelings, and I want to be certain that I'm not wasting her time or leading her on. I guess time will tell. Anyway, thanks to the 5 people who are still invested in my crappy life story. If something else interesting or exciting happens, I'll probably post it on my profile. It's been a wild ride, but all of the support I've gotten from the broader Reddit community has been awesome. Thanks again. Edit, December 7, 2023. I just found out something today from Sarah that I didn't know, but I feel is pretty relevant to the discussion. Basically, Marty's lawyer presented a lot more evidence than just Sarah's testimony. They had also had his kid screened and examined by 2 different psychologists within the week that they had first found out about the impending accusations. During this process, some stuff came out. Basically, their daughter caught Evelyn and AP in flagrante delicto at their home multiple times. Her mom was giving her ice cream to not say anything. Marty's lawyer reads some from a transcript of one of the psychologist interviews and, well, I will just say the phrase big we came up. This poor kid, no one deserves a shit mother like that. Now the fact that she only gets court-supervised visitation makes a lot of sense. Sarah says that it sounds like she just saw them doing it a couple of times, not that he did anything to her. Needless to say, I think Evelyn is in the royal shit right now. I'm surprised her parents haven't booted her ass from their home. Comments. So I'm curious what the parents' thought process was to go along with her plan. Is it just to punish Mark for not wanting to be cheated on? Is it because their poor baby got what she had coming? But good on y'all. Y'all helped make the niece's life better. Now you both need therapy BC while you are understanding where you have issues. Going 100% another direction isn't the answer. Oop, I'm pretty sure that it was all about custody of the kid. Marty and his daughter were living with his parents, so that made him de facto the primary caregiver, and he was letting Evelyn have it with the divorce, basically asking for primary custody, letting her have their daughter every other weekend, the house and part of her retirement accounts. Basically, if Marty got even close to what he was asking for, they might be lucky to see their granddaughter once a month, maybe twice. I think they couldn't tolerate it and it drove them to be stupid. On Evelyn's part, I think she was hoping to get Marty to tell his lawyers to back down. I don't think they anticipated being foiled at the initial hearing and were hoping to negotiate. Definitely a case of F around and find out if you ask me. I have a question about how you were able to verify that your brother stopped talking to that model. Did he use his real name with her, or did you know his username? Oop, yes and yes. Seems as if your ex has stepped up to make amends for facilitating the betrayal of Marty. Have you spoken to him? Oop, we talk, but we're not super best friends, so I'm sure there is a lot of stuff going on that I don't know about. It's his business really. If he wants to talk to me about it, I assume he would. June 19, 2024, update, divorce results. Hi everyone. It's been a while since I've logged into Reddit on this account, only to see a couple hundred messages begging me for an update, so I figured I would at least sort out a few things that are commonly being asked. First off, Marty and Evelyn are divorced. It took a bit over half a year for it to be finalized, but despite Evelyn's hijinks and stalling, that seems to be about typical for where we live. The only real notable things about the divorce itself is that Marty was granted primary physical custody of their daughter, which was seen as a bit of a coup considering how these things typically go, but to be fair, Evelyn mostly did that to herself. Marty's lawyer was able to make a huge stink about her false charges in the court as well as the psychologist's reports, and that was combined with the fact that Marty already had custody. Him and his daughter had been living with his parents since he filed. The judge seemed to think that it was appropriate to basically just leave things how they were. It's true what they say, guys, possession is 9/10 of the law. Keep that in mind if you ever get divorced yourselves. The financial fallout didn't seem to be that big of a deal. The house was sold. Marty got a slightly bigger share of it than Evelyn did in lieu of maintenance/alimony, and that was that. I actually had dinner with Marty at a little bar and grill close to where I work one night, and he thanked me again for my help and had a lot of nice things to say about Sarah, which I appreciated. She's really been coming through as an aunt for his little girl and spending time with her pretty frequently. I didn't point out to him that this is because there's no way she'd get to see her when it was Evelyn's weekend, as the sisters are still not talking, but I'm sure he can figure it out on his own. One interesting thing that came out of that dinner is that Marty told me that Evelyn wrote him a big letter during the proceedings, begging him for another chance, and in this letter she confessed a lot of things that even Sarah was unaware of. Turns out, this wasn't Evelyn's first adultery rodeo. She had cheated on Marty when they were dating and again shortly after they got married. Marty and I were both stymied by that. Why would you marry someone you were cheating on? Like, no offense to Marty here, but he's not rich and he's not some super stud, just a slightly quirky normal looking high school teacher. If Evelyn didn't like that, then she certainly didn't need to marry him. Anyway, it blew my mind. Anyway, she went on to say that she was seeing a therapist and working on herself and all the usual stuff, but neither Marty nor I felt like therapy would help her very much. I mean, it was clear to me that Evelyn's cheating wasn't because of some undiagnosed childhood trauma or self-esteem issues. Given what she tried to pull in court, it's way more likely that she has a morality problem, and I don't think therapy can fundamentally change the nature of someone that drastically. I shared with Marty some of the insights I had gotten from my conversations with Sarah about her relationship and childhood with Evelyn, and we both came to the conclusion that fundamentally, Evelyn is just a user. She will basically do whatever she wants, use anyone however she wants, and she will never consider how it impacts other people because she feels she can just manipulate everyone into getting off her back. Suffice it to say, Evelyn's letter didn't have much of an impact on Marty, or rather, it only firmed up his already solid resolve to divorce her. Marty said that he felt that she was so dishonest and manipulative, that even her mea culpa confessions had an air of manipulation about them. I tend to agree. I think it was a last-ditch effort to try and appear truthful to him. Too little, too late. Secondly, during this dinner Marty also told me that he had finally contacted the wife of Jake, the affair partner, a couple of weeks ago. I asked him why he waited so long and he said he just wanted to make sure that it didn't impact his divorce with Evelyn in some sort of way. I didn't like that answer, but I could at least understand it. He said that she was a nice lady who was apparently incredibly shocked when he presented her with the evidence of what Jake and Evelyn had been up to. Remember, Marty had video of them in his house. It seems that Mrs. Jake had absolutely no clue that anything was going on. She was too busy dealing with their small child, I think 1 or 2 years old. Marty felt pretty bad about the whole thing, but he said that if the situation was reversed, he would have wanted to know. I could only nod in agreement with him there. It seems like a difficult, but necessary thing for him to do. There's no update on if that couple are getting divorced or not, but Marty said he had the impression that she was going to try and salvage something due to their small child. I did ask him if he was interested in getting back at the guy, but Marty just waved me off. He said that anything he did to him would probably just make it harder for his wife and kid, and he'd rather just get on with his life. I can understand that, but I think Marty is a better guy than I am, because if I was in his shoes, I would have really put the screws to the guy. Well, I guess Jake has enough of his own problems right now anyway. Lastly, I know people really want an update about me and Sarah, so here it is. We had a good trip in Queensland. The weather was hot, but evidently pretty mild this last Christmas. There were lots of beach days, lots of spending time with my nieces. Sarah is an elementary school teacher and she's fantastic with kids. All in all, it was a great time. I think Sarah and I both found it really helpful to be away from home for a couple of weeks. Being together in a different setting really helped us focus on the here and now and not so much on the wild trip we'd both been on. By the time we left to come back to the States, we were both in a very relaxed state of mind, and a lot of problems that we had that seemed very difficult to get past started to feel a lot smaller. That's not to say that there aren't still sore spots for both of us. Predictably, my newfound desire to never get married has not been easy for Sarah to adjust to, and to be frank, the better our relationship got, the more this became an issue. I had to explain to her that it wasn't really about us, or just about us. It was more about witnessing a bunch of bullshit in a short period of time by a lot of different people that turned me off to it in general. The cheating, physical and emotional, the lies, the pain, all of that. It just seems way too heavy for me right now to contemplate. She stewed on that for a few days, and then one night while we were washing up from dinner, she asked me if I still intended to have children someday or not. It was a fair question, and one that I hadn't really been asking myself. You see, one of the things I'd been looking forward to was starting a family with Sarah. I mean this sincerely, she would be an amazing mom. She works with kids every day, so you would think it would put her off, but rather you can tell that it's basically her calling. Just the way she is with my nieces is freaking adorable. Anyway, I realized that while I may have emotionally given up on marriage, I hadn't given up on having a family. I know that sounds odd, but you can tell that I hadn't thought this through all the way. Sarah's question basically made me think much more longer term than I had been willing to do previously, and I struggled to come up with a good answer at the time. I was pretty open to Sarah about what I was feeling at the time, and she seemed like she understood. She said, "I want a family too, but if you don't want one, I'd still want to be with you." It was nice to hear, but I'm not so sure that I would be happy if that's the case. Like I said, Sarah would be an amazing mom, and it feels like bullshit on my part if being with me denies her that opportunity. We went back and forth on this a little bit, with me trying to convince her she was giving up too much and her holding fast to what she said and not backing down. We basically ended the discussion with an agreement on both sides to think about it more and come back and talk about it later. So, that's what I did. I know some people don't want to have kids, but deep down inside I knew that I did. More than that, I wanted a family, something approximating the family I grew up in as a kid, and to me that means a mother and father, together, with their children, all in the same house. At this point, the point of being married or not becomes essentially moot, because if you split, there's still child support and custody, and likely you'll be a de facto spouse anyway, so splitting communal property and all that jazz. It's like the old saying, 6 of one, half a dozen of another. You can call it whatever you want, but effectively it's a marriage, just with a certificate or not. Once I had accepted that, I asked myself if I would get into this kind of child rearing / common law / marriage type situation with any other woman than Sarah. Like, would it be easier for me to commit to that if it was a different woman? The more I thought about it, the less I felt that this was true. I love Sarah, that had never been in doubt. My trust in her had been damaged, pretty seriously, but if we had more time and hadn't had a wedding looming over our heads, we might have been able to make it work. I felt pretty strongly that the time constraint had played a bit part in me pulling the pin on the impending nuptials. Now, before anyone gets their hopes up, Sarah and I didn't rush out and get married. We did, however, sit down again and have a more serious talk about our future, one that was frankly, way overdue. I acknowledged that I still wanted to have a family, in the future, and she said that if we did have children together, she would prefer to be married or at least cohabitating. I pointed out to her that these were basically the same thing in our state, at least after a couple of years. She said she knew, and then that's when she surprised me with something. She went to her purse and retrieved an envelope and handed it to me. I was expecting it to be another letter, but it was not. Instead, it was a prenuptial agreement. I asked her when she had this drawn up, and she said, shortly after we separated. She had intended to plead her case with it at the time, but thought better of it once she came to understand my position on where things had landed in our relationship. "I felt like I needed to listen to what you were telling me instead of trying to change your mind," she said. That was a bit eye-opening to me, because I thought, evidently incorrectly, that she was much more resentful about the marriage being called off. She said she was more hurt than resentful, and if she was angry, it was at herself for being stupid. Still, she had held onto the agreement, probably because she was hoping that if the opportunity ever came up, it might prove how serious she was taking what she had done. I asked her, if I had asked you to marry me, would you have shown this to me? And she said, absolutely. I need you to have complete trust in me. I don't want to let you, or me, down again. I'm pretty good at reading people, and this felt like as honest a statement as I've ever heard from someone. I read the agreement, and yes, I checked the date on her signature. Her story checked out. It seemed pretty sensible to me, and there was even an infidelity clause in it where it was spelled out exactly what was considered infidelity. It was pretty eye-opening to me. Sarah evidently considers a lot of behavior that I might have given a pass on, much more serious. I mentioned that to her, and she said we could revise it later, after a good discussion, but the main points were pretty solid. I agreed with her. Anyway, we put the agreement aside for now and talked a little bit more about where we go from here. Short and long of it, I asked her to move back in with me. I think she was stunned by this because she immediately broke down crying. Sarah is a messy crier, even when she's happy crying, and my t-shirt suffered for it. She still has a few months left on her lease, so she's going to ride it out until that's over, and then we'll move her back into the house. She said that when she moves in, she should sign some sort of rental agreement with me. I told her I thought that was a bit over the top and months away, so let's just park that thought for now. I won't say that it felt like we closed one chapter and started another, because it's not quite like that. We've been going through a long process of sorting out our feelings, talking to each other, and on my part, really observing her actions. In fact, one of the things that was kind of a downer at the time is that Sarah said to me, "This is the best thing that's happened to me in a long time, and I have almost no one I can talk to about it." You see, it's not just Evelyn that she's not talking to, but she's still not talking to her parents. Her father has made some overtures to stay in contact, but her and her mother are basically treating each other like they died. I have some pretty complicated feelings about this. On one hand, I think her family has been a big problem for her, and even if she's been working through it with a therapist, neither of us think she is prepared to deal with him yet. But on the other hand, I do wish that things didn't have to be like this for her. After all, my family and her seem like almost complete opposites, and I guess I just wish she had been born into a family like mine instead. There's a lot of really good parts of family life and having good siblings and parents that Sarah has never really experienced, and this makes me sad for her. Hell, it makes her sad for her as well. But, if there's a bright spot, it's that my family never stopped caring about her. Even my parents, I think, have been silently rooting for us to figure things out. So, that's where we are today. We're still working through things at what probably feels like a glacial pace for readers here on Reddit, but that's just how life works sometimes. Overall, I would have to say that despite appearances, our relationship is much stronger now than it was before I called off the marriage. We both have a much deeper understanding of each other, and frankly, Sarah has really demonstrated a lot of emotional growth in the last year. Jesus, it's been a year, an entire year. It's surreal to me how it's flown by, but I'm glad to put most of it in the rearview mirror. Like I said, I don't think we've turned a corner, it's been way more gradual than that, but I definitely do feel like after some soul searching that we are back on the right track. P.S. For anyone who cares, I plan on finishing the pagoda this year. There's still enough time to get it done before summer is over and I'd like to have at least a few fireside nights outside with my ex-fiancée and current girlfriend.